it's Marnie again, and this is a little bit on color, which is our topic for the second lesson. You've all got my list of books, and there's 3 good books I just want to hold up to you. Stephen Quiller wrote these 2, Watercolor Painting and The Painter's Guide to Color. And The Painter's Guide to Color, because Stephen Quiller is very well known for that, includes his own Quiller wheel. So I want to talk briefly about that. The other book that I recommend is Making Colors Sing by Jean Dobie. She's more into neutral colors, so if that's what you like, you might enjoy reading her. They both have a whole lot of information about the emotional impact of color, mixing color, using opposite colors, etc. But I recommend that you make yourself a color wheel based on your own colors. So this is the one I made based on my colors. These are all the colors I've recommended are here, the primaries and secondaries on the outside and the earth or neutral colors on the inside. And if you do this on the kind of paper you're actually using, because the paper will influence the color. If it's creamy yellow, that changes it from a very white paper. So if you make this on the kind of paper you use with your own paints, you'll know exactly how those colors are going to look when you put them on paper. I also recommend, if possible, that you have that you have a palette that is circular. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but I have a circle inside here, and this actually lifts out for easy cleaning. And then I have my colors arranged from yellow, green, the different blues, going from the greeny ones to the purplier ones, purples, my reds, and burnt sienna. And in the corners are some more earthy tones or some colors I don't use very often. And you get to know your palette after a while, and you know automatically where colors are. Try and put your yellow in a place where it's not going to have a lot of other colors dripping over it. And in a minute I'm going to talk about mixing color, and we'll mix some greens, and I'll put some greens on paper for you to show how it's done. I also wanted to mention making little charts for yourself. So I keep strips of paper. When I put my paper on the stretcher board, I end up with little strips, and I keep them to test for colors. But I also make myself little color comparisons, and you can do this in a book if you want, or on separate pieces of paper. But what I've done here is I've got sap green on the left 3 times, and I've got it mixed with burnt sienna, new gamboge, and aureolin yellow, so my cool and my warm yellow. And then these are the colors in between that I can get if I want to mix, the warmer, limier kinds of green. And then on the back, I've got sap green 3 times, but I've got it mixed with Winsor blue, French ultramarine, and Winsor purple. And these are the darker, cooler greens that I can get from mixing those. I've done something similar here with permanent rose mixed with purple and 2 blues, and then permanent rose mixed with the 2 yellows and burnt sienna to give a range of oranges. So you can learn a lot just by experimenting, and the more limited your palette, the more harmonious your painting is going to be, because all your colors have come from the same basic 6 or 8 colors that you have on your palette. So when I'm mixing color, I'm going to mix some green here and come in with a bit of green leaf. I've already done most of the background in this painting, but what I do is I first of all, I mist my colors. If they've been dry for a while, I just get a sprayer and I mist them a little bit in advance of painting, so that they're easy to get to access the color. And I have 2 things of water, one to keep fairly clean and another one to use if my brush is very dirty. So it's always nice to have some clean water. And then I'll just transfer from my palette some color, all the colors I think I might use. So here, to mix up green, I've got sap green, which is the only green on my palette, and I've got it mixed with aureolin yellow. It's on a little green here already. The yellows will pick up other colors really easily. I've got my new gamboge, which is a warmer yellow, Quin Gold next to it, and then burnt sienna. Now this is actually a brown. Quin Gold looks almost the same color until you start mixing it, and then you see it really is a gold color. And on the other side of green, I've got French ultramarine, which will make it granulate. So that's the really good thing about it. And I also have some Winsor Blue over here. I don't often use this when mixing greens. It's very intense, but it would give you a very strong bluey green. And then Winsor Violet. And one of the things in the page that I've attached to this lesson, there's a few, there's a lot of important things. It's distilled from years of painting, all my sort of little gems about color. But when you want to neutralize a color, when you want to subdue it, you add a little bit of the opposite color. So the opposite of green is red, and I don't actually have red on my palette here. I could, but I prefer to either mix it with purple, which is blue and red, or with burnt sienna, which is kind of an orangey color. So it has red in it too. Both of those will tone down my green. They'll gray it more, but the brown will gray it in a warm, kind of a moss greeny way, and the purple will make a kind of a dark blacky forest green. So I can just show you those two things before we actually start, if you like. Here's sap green, and I'll just mix them right on my palette. So in the middle, here's sap green, and I'll mix it with a little of the burnt sienna, and you can see it's made in more of a kind of it's a bit dulled down, but it's on the warmer yellowy side. So I should, because there's sap green, pure sap green. I need to tilt this more. And then over here, we've got sap green again, and we're going to mix it with a little bit of purple, and it'll be it's cooler because it's got blue in the purple, but it's also grayed down compared to if we mixed sap green with, well, especially with Winsor Blue, it's going to be much brighter green. And a bit less so if we mixed it with French Ultramarine. If we mix it with French Ultramarine, it's going to granulate. And because French Ultramarine is a little bit purplier, it'll be cool, but you can't really see it here. But it will granulate more. In other words, when I move it around, it'll settle into a kind of texture on the paper because the little bits that are in it will settle down. So Winsor Blue doesn't have any granulation effect, and you can choose Winsor Blue if you don't want that effect. I really like it, actually. And I didn't do one with just yellow, just Aureolin. It's going to be, a nice light lime green, and if you add your warmer yellow, it'll be similar, and this is with Quin Gold. As the yellow gets more on the orange side, it will change the color again. So you can do this, just, find all sorts of different colors of green that you can get, and it can be quite exciting, and it's a good idea to write in pencil marks how you got that particular shade of green. So what I'm going to do now is move this over here, and I'm going to move this down. My daughter said that it's easier to see if I paint flat. What I've done is so this is the reference photo. It's a pink tree peony, and I'd rather have done this at the beginning, but anyways, I've already started this with my live class, and I've done most of the background, but I'm working on these two leaves down here, and I've pre-wet them because it's boring to watch me wet, but it's important to wet the paper before you get started, and you have to wet it carefully. I've just sort of made a boo-boo there. Oops. Always have some Kleenex ready if you make a boo-boo. If you wet where you're not supposed to, you can dry it, but you've got to make sure it gets really dry before you put paint there, or it'll go somewhere where you don't want it to go. So there's 3 different colors of green here in the 3 leaves, and I've left a little bit of space for some of the main veins because they have some red in them. I don't really want to get the green onto the red. So I'm going to start with the back leaf, and it's a fairly gray green. So I'm going to use some of the purple and green mixture that I've got, and I'm going to lighten it up with a little bit of brown because I don't want it really dark. So both the purple and the green, both the purple and the burnt sienna are dulling it down a bit. And then, that's a little bit too dull. I do want it green, not, now because it's sort of freshly wet, I don't want my brush too wet or I'm getting just too much water and it's going to be very light. I've tried to leave some of the little veins dry and paint around them so that when we add red, so the color, there's a bit, can't see my own drawing here. So this is much more fun if I were doing a big area like that, but I think it's just important to see how to work with the water and keep varying up your color a little bit. You don't want it exactly the same everywhere. So all of these 3 leaves are going to be a slightly different color, but I need to darken this a little bit more. Not too much more, but it will dry lighter. So I'll make it a little darker up here. And you can, and make sure that my edge is nice and smooth here, because your edges are really important. This is background and isn't as important as if it were against the petal, but you don't want, if the wet got into the petal over here, then the pink petal would be getting green on it. So I've been very careful going around here. Now I can let that dry as long as there's nothing that's bothering me about it. It's got, it maybe needs just a little more interest in it, changing it up a bit. So I'm dropping in some different color. When I say dropping in, it's just letting the paint go into the water and sort of do its own thing. And we can move it around like this, especially if it's a bigger area. It's kind of hard here, but I'm sorry I'm moving it away from you. It's just to get gravity moving those colors around for us. And we'll just tighten up this edge a little bit. And then I'm going to, this leaf is a little bit stronger green. So we want a little more of this color and we want some of these warmer colors. The yellow and the Quin Gold will be sort of more of our base color. And it's lighter on this part and a little bit darker over here. Yeah, okay. So this is a little bit darker. This will dry lighter, but you can see I'm sort of painting around the veins. A bit stronger color at the base. And then I want it a bit, I want one more bit that's stronger right here. Try and have one even stroke as you're putting on paint if you can. It's better than kind of going, you know, tapping at it. If you've got a little bit of something, you can just pick it up like that with a wet brush. So now I want to come to the part that's a bit yellower. So I'm just going to put almost straight yellow on my brush because the yellow is going to get contaminated with the other color. And that will give it a little bit of variety. So here, the veins are, they're just suggested, so I don't, I need to come with a little bit more green right there. It doesn't have to be complete because this is in the background. Oh, and I've done one thing here. You have to be really careful if I've got my hand into here. So if I'd been clever, I would have actually done this one first. So this is probably a bit bright for all the other colors, and I might need to tone it down. But for now, I think I'll leave it. You can come a little bit stronger in the beginning because it's easier to tone something down. And you can see here, this was very dark and very light, but around the edges, I didn't want the background to compete with the pink flowers. And I'm just going to tighten up this edge a bit because this is darker here. I can't paint this one till these dry or they'll all smudge, and I want them fairly distinct. So in the middle is going to be the darkest one of all. But I can, there's a stem that comes here, and I want to make sure that I've got it defined so that it looks like a stem, because this is going to be red later, so I don't want the green to get on it, but I don't want it too wide. So this is the kind of thing you do before you let it dry. But you can see that there's a whole range of colors. This is paler, this is brighter, and this one's going to be darker like that. So the stronger darks are in the bottom of the painting. I just want to do one more thing. I want to add a tiny bit of more color here. I like this mixture of grays, and we put a little bit of splatter in there. I don't want to change it too much. So I'm wetting around the peony edge, just making sure I don't get any water on that. And I'm wetting beyond where I'm going to paint. And I just want to throw a little bit more green in here. I want a little bit more green to show up. So this is on top of my color. And I'm just going to let it fade off there. So this is wet beyond where I've painted. That's really important because you don't want a solid line there, and it's wet well beyond what I've painted at the top as well. It's just adding a little more richness there. I might add a touch of yellow here just to brighten this up a little bit more on the top. So this is still soft, but it's the second layer will add richness. The first layer, always when it dries, is going to be a little bit flat. So I think I'm happy with that. Maybe a little bit more there. I want the effect of the light coming through here. So next week we're going to talk more about values, but now you can see the granulation effect I was talking about because there's been French ultramarine in there, and it's got that sort of speckledy look, which I really like. Maybe I can do one more thing before I stop, and that's with a fairly thin brush, I want to do some of these lines, and you can see that well, maybe you can't, but the reddish purple is on the left hand side. So I'm going to mix a little alizarin crimson with some purple to darken it up. And even some of that muddy color I've already got there, that's a combination of different things. Ideally, I should be waiting a bit for this because it's going to spread, but I'll make it pretty dry, and we'll just see what happens here. Just want the effect of this purple. It's one way of tying in the painting because it introduces the pink that's in the flowers back into some of these veins. And this is the biggest vein. It has the strongest color, so I'm going to go over that one more time. I want it to spread a bit because this is background, and I want it to be kind of soft. But right here, I want this color a little bit more prominent. There. Now I might do a little bit in there as well if it spreads too much. So I'll keep an eye on that. But you normally would wait till it just starts to lose its shine and then come in with some of that veining. And I've done that up here. You can see how it's spread there, and you know, I just want that effect, so I don't want it to be too definite. The really definite stuff I'm saving for the main flower. So this little bit is darker up here. There's a dark turnover. That's okay. And this is the actual petal, the rose petal there, and then this one will be darker, and this is going to be a magenta, quite a strong magenta, but I want this to be a little bit more dry before I do that. So I'm not going to do it now, but you might, at some point, I might show you this painting so you can see how it turned out. So remember, mix your colors. I don't know if you can see this, but mix your palette so that you've got a whole variety of colors. Now I've introduced my reds and purples. All of these are going to, you know, different varieties of green, and I can go here to make really blacky greens. I can go here to make my warmer greens, my earthier greens, or my just strong, you know, blue-greeny colors would be with these colors over here. It's all on my palette, and have fun. Have some pieces of paper you can just use to test your colors if you're not sure, like we did with some of these greens, just what color you're going to get. And make yourself a color wheel. And I'll have another video when we talk about negative painting. So I look forward to seeing you then and to seeing what you've been painting. Thanks.